Hello and welcome, my name is Ivan, and today's objectives for this video include showing you the major components of the anesthesia machine checkout, the major steps involved. We would like to show you these visually so you can get an idea of what you'll be doing, and then we'd also like to try and show you some of the problems you may face while doing an anesthesia machine checkout. This is the GE Detexometer ASYS CS2, and this is the machine we'll be using in our demonstration video. This is the 15-item checklist that we'll be using to demonstrate our anesthesia machine checkout. And as long as you follow these 15 steps, you should have a very thorough and complete anesthesia checkout. You do not need to do these steps in any particular order. In fact, you can do them according to whatever mnemonic you're using, SOAP, TIM, or Miss Maids, and you should be able to achieve the same results no matter which style you use. Ensure you have an alternative source of ventilation by keeping a bag valve mask in the room. Make sure it's fully functioning and can self-inflate and maintain a seal for ventilation. Notice how the bag valve mask returns to its normal shape and how it maintains pressure on the attached pressure gauge. You can either do this with your hand or with the mask. Keep in mind that some sites may not want you to open and touch equipment like this, so just double check. Next, make sure you have an auxiliary O2 cylinder and that it's full or near full. These are typically found on the gurney during transport. And make sure you have a way to connect the patient's oxygen to the tank. Having an alternative source of ventilation and oxygenation is necessary because failure to ventilate is a major cause of morbidity and mortality related to anesthetic care. These are the items you'll need to set up suction. Notice where we place the canister and how we ensure that all connections are secure with the tube and canister. Ensure that continuous suction is on by turning the dial to the right. You can check to make sure that suction is adequate by placing a finger over the distal end of the tubing and by watching the gauge needle. Feel free to connect the yonker and check the suction as well to ensure that it's adequate. When you're finished, you can place the clean yonker somewhere on top of the anesthesia machine or in one of the drawers. And if you're having issues with your suction, you may need to turn on suction to the canister itself using the switch you see here. You can also double check the tubing that it's connected properly to the back of the machine, going from the canister to the machine, and then ensure that this white tube is properly secured and that it's connected to the part on the stand here that says vacuum. For obvious reasons, you always need to be able to clear the airway, and that's why we have suction immediately available. Turn on the anesthesia machine by turning this switch to the right. The machine will do a series of self-tests. If the machine is already on in the morning, turn it off and back on again to ensure these tests are completed. Notice the green LED indicator that signals you are currently connected to AC power. Should you get disconnected from the wall or if there is a power failure, then this light will turn off. If the light is off, this indicates that you are on battery power. These red plugs typically have emergency generator power, so if there was a facility-wide power failure, these should still work for the anesthesia machine. Switching from AC to battery power can be very discreet, and your only warning may be when the battery power runs out and the anesthesia machine turns off completely. Next, you'll want to make sure you have all of the appropriate monitors for the case. And in this example here, we're connecting an ART line cable. But typically, you'll want to have your ECG, SpO2, blood pressure, temperature, end tidal CO2, and even a nerve simulator just in case on standby for every case. For alarms, you can click the alarms limits there on the screen, and then you can adjust your parameters as shown, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. And you can increase upper and lower limits from here, depending on what type of case you're doing. And then you can also change the volume of the QRS by clicking that button, and you can go high or low depending on what the needs are, or if the surgeon wants it more quiet. Adjusting blood pressure here, you can change the repeat time of the blood pressure cuff by hitting the box directly that the blood pressure is associated with, or you can hit the repeat time button here at the bottom and adjust it there. If you need another parameter to show, you can click an empty box like shown, and you can add temperature in, for example. And if you're trying to activate the art line, you may need to click the little box in the lower right corner, hit the art line, and then hit activate. If you're doing a pediatric case, for example, you'll want to switch from adult to pediatric profiles, and then again, make sure your monitors and alarms all match appropriately. Should central O2 supply fail, you want to make sure that the spare cylinder on the back of the machine is full or near full. Notice here that the tank pressures are listed digitally, and that you've got gas pressures for O2, nitrous, and air. If you want to verify the pressure in the tank, you can go around the machine and disconnect oxygen from the wall. Make sure that the tank is closed. Then go to the front and push the flush valve and drain it until the tank pressure reads 0. Once you do this, you can go back around to the tank on the back of the machine, open the cylinder, then return to the front to see what the current pressure reading is. Once you've got that pressure, you can then go back around and close the tank so that it doesn't drain inadvertently during the case, and then reconnect oxygen as shown. You'll know you've got a firm connection based on visual and tactile feedback. Verify that your pipeline pressures are at or greater than 50 psi, and you'll notice here that our pipeline pressures are located right below our cylinder pressures, which we just discussed. This Datex-O-Meter uses an Aladdin cassette vaporizer, and you'll want to check it to make sure that it's full and that the cap is sealed tightly. You'll notice the fill level comes up to the dark line, the black triangle, and this is how you remove it. You twist that knob and then pull the handle. So to refill the cassette, you're going to need the bottle and the special adapter you see here. Remove the cap off the bottle and then place the adapter on. It fits on only one way, and it only fits on this specific bottle of sevoflurane, so as not to confuse it with other gases like isoflurane. Then you can take the bottle and you will open up the cap to the vaporizer, and the adapter will only fit this vaporizer. So you'll have to look for the grooves at the top of the adapter and make sure those match in order for it to fit. You can see you twist and then push and it should fall into place. So this vaporizer is already full, but normally you would see bubbling here, and then you would stop as the bubbling slows down and the black line reaches the top. Once it's full, remove the bottle and adapter, and then go ahead and place the original cap back on the bottle and then place the cap back onto the vaporizer. You have to make sure you do this correctly, because a loose cap on a vaporizer could be a source of leaks later down the line as you go to test your circuit. One thing you may encounter is a cassette that doesn't fully engage. As you notice here, it slides back as you try to lock it in place. This won't be fully connected to the anesthesia machine, and it won't deliver anesthetic gases, and it'll be a potential for leak later on. Give it a firm push and then a twist, and it should stay in place. This section of the anesthesia checkout is automated and checks for leaks in the machine, circuit leaks, and calibrates the flow and oxygen sensors. Results are reported during each step, so you'll know when errors appear. To start this process, go ahead and find one of these bags, usually in the room, which has your circuit and reservoir bag inside. Go ahead and connect the expiratory limb as shown. It has a picture of an arrow going in to the machine. And then get your inspiratory limb and plug it into the area where there's the arrow going out. Take the patient Y and connect it here as shown, and then get your reservoir bag and connect it. Now you can go ahead and run a full test. Follow each step of these instructions. So you're going to set the bag vent switch to vent. So bag to vent. Then you're going to open the patient Y by removing this small blue cap, exposing it to room air. Next, you'll want to remove this latch here to expose the flow sensors and also the O2 sensor. Some models don't have an exposable O2 sensor, they have an integrated one, so you won't need to expose this, but go ahead and do it anyways just to be thorough. And be very careful as you're putting this back in. Most people don't take it out this far, but we're doing it now just to show you what's inside. and then go ahead and reinsert the latch. At this point, you should go ahead and be able to hit the start button, which will initiate the first self-check, and this takes less than 30 seconds. If everything looks good, you'll move on to this step, which is to ensure that the bellows are fully collapsed, which they are, and then to make sure that the patient Y is occluded. And at this point, you can go ahead and connect your end-tidal CO2 and then connect it to the part of the patient Y that we had opened before. Then go ahead and return and hit continue. Now this step takes about 5 minutes, so we are going to fast forward through all of this and show you what the end results look like. But as you can see, it's going to check several different major components: the circuit, agent delivery, circuit compliance, O2 flows, battery power, and airway gas modules. As the vent and gas test nears completion, we can see that we've successfully checked many of these components. And the next screen should pop up pretty soon and give you instructions for the next portion of the circuit leak test. Perfect, so now follow these instructions one by one. First, we're going to make sure the patient Y is still occluded, which it should be from the last test. Then we're going to go ahead and set the bag vent switch to bag. Then set the APO valve between 30 and 70. Halfway is fine, or just after 30 is also acceptable. And then we're going to hit start. This takes approximately 1 minute to complete. We're going to fast forward for time purposes. Once that's done, you should get a vent and gas pass with a date and time and a circuit leak pass with a date and time. You won't be expected to actually test the scavenging system bag, but you should know where it's located and what it looks like. This white bag here is your scavenging bag, and then the purple pipeline next to it is your anesthesia gas scavenging system, which will vacuum away the anesthetic waste gases. In the normal position, it'll be deflated, but if there's a problem, this bag will start to increase in size. If possible, call an anesthesia tech to come and check it with you. But if one's not immediately available, try reaching under and making sure that the valve is all the way open by adjusting this black cap. Once the vacuum has been restored, the bag should slowly decrease in size and shape and return to normal. The CO2 absorber is on the lower left of the front of the machine right here. You can release it by pressing this green latch forward, and then you can slide out the CO2 absorber. This latch is not the same as the latch we used earlier for the flow sensors and O2 sensor, so be careful that you don't confuse the two. When you take out the CO2 absorber, you're going to notice that there's 2 holes at the top. Those 2 holes have to match with the 2 holes that are coming down from the machine. If not, this could become a point for leak later on, and you won't be able to deliver gases or ventilate the patient adequately. Typically, you'll know when the CO2 absorber is exhausted based on the color. It typically changes to a violet color, but you should know that this is not always reliable. The degree of change in color can be very slight and you may not notice it. So the best way to know if the CO2 absorber is exhausted is based on the inspiratory CO2 detection on the monitor itself. You're not expected to document anything on paper, but you will be documenting an anesthesia equipment check in Epic before each case. The last check involves making sure the ventilator settings are appropriate for your patient and for the case. And then right before induction, you're going to do an anesthesia timeout where you make sure that your monitors are functioning, you have a capnogram present, your oxygen saturation is measured, you have flow meter and vent settings that are proper, and that your manual ventilator switch is set to manual, and that your vaporizers are adequately filled. There are a lot of reasons to work quickly in anesthesia, but having an anesthesia timeout helps ensure that all of our equipment is indeed ready and is intended to help reduce and avoid preventable errors.